Aronofsky. And the amazing Brendan Fraser. Thank you all for this incredibly moving, heart-achingly tender character study of a good but flawed man wrestling with regret and aiming for redemption. This is amazing. I'm going to start with you, Brendan. Your portrayal of Charlie is so multidimensional, and he's witty, he's whip smart, he's compassionate, maybe towards everyone but himself. He is probably one of the most multifaceted and complex characters we've seen on the screen in a very long time. What was your reaction when you were first offered this part?
Happiness. I very much wanted to work with Darren. I did not have sight of the screenplay when initially we met. I only knew that this was the story of a man called Charlie who's been living alone for a considerable amount of time, and he has certain regrets about some choices in his life, and he has been harming himself by overeating, and realizes in what little time he has left, he desperately wants to reconnect with his daughter if he can at all, and that's what Darren told me, and I learned that it would be a pretty involved process to play Charlie, to create his body, and I knew that we would be working in very close conditions on a small set, 2-bedroom apartment. That's about all I really knew. That was plenty enough for me to be interested, that's for sure. And after having that sight of Sam's screenplay, I felt my teeth sweating. I wanted to do this so badly.
So, Darren, Charlie is a character that we rarely see in films, and he's portrayed with so much empathy and honesty and intelligence. What was it that clinched it for you that Brendan was the ideal person to play him?
Well, it took a really long time to cast the film. It was one of the biggest challenges. I got the rights about 10 years ago from Sam, and we considered many people, actors, non-actors. Actually, my casting director, Mary Vanu, is right here. She can tell you more. Thank you, Mary, for 10 years of not getting paid. And we thought about all different types of, just nothing really clicked for me. And I just didn't feel it. And that's generally what gets me excited to work, is the people I'm collaborating with. And the actors have to be the right person for the right job. And then when I saw Brendan, to be completely transparent, I actually didn't know a lot of his work. But just seeing him, I was like, wow, we never actually thought about him. And so he lived in upstate New York. Mary got me a meeting with him. He came by my office. He was a complete gentleman. And he was clearly had something to prove to the world and to himself, because he hadn't been given opportunities in a while. And I always liked that, because I knew it was going to be an incredible challenge emotionally and physically. And so I was intrigued, and I called Sam, and Sam was like, and that was the end of that conversation. So I said, okay, let's do a reading. So we got a small theater on St. Mark's, and Brendan read Sadie. I chose because I saw her in Stranger Things episode, season 2. And I was like, oh, who's she? She's awesome. And she is awesome. And a few other actors, and they read it, and from like 2 lines in, I was like, okay, it's good. But that was February 2020, so the world shut down 3 weeks later, and then it took a while to get it going again.
And Sam, I wanted to ask you about the origins of the story. You wrote the play, and I know Darren saw it 10 years ago. And I think it came from when you were in college, from what I had read. You want to tell us a little bit about the origins?
Yeah, I mean, I think I told the story in the introduction, but I'm trying to think if anything I can add to that. I mean, I guess the origins of the movie version, because I told everybody about the origins of the play and my personal connections to it, but yeah, I didn't know that Darren had saw the play. And so I just got a call one day that said Darren Aronofsky wants to meet with you, and which I was so focused on just trying to make how to figure out what kind of playwright I was and what kind of stories I wanted to tell that I had never even occurred to me that there could be a movie adaptation of something that I wrote. And I think it was a very slow process, which I was glad.
Hi, down there. So you play this very dedicated and wide-eyed, kind of innocent character. What did you draw upon to play Thomas? Was there any like literary character or film characters that you thought about, or what was the inspiration?
Yeah, actually, so when I read the script, what really drew me to the character was how similar he was to me when I was in like middle school and high school. I grew up in a pretty religious household, especially when I was younger. I went to Sunday school, and I went to church every Sunday, that whole thing. And when I read the script, it just felt so real. Like I'd never seen a character that had the same, internal struggles about belief and what you truly believe than in Sam's script. And it really just, I was crying during the script, not only because, one, of the ending, just how sad the overall story is, but just because I felt heard and connected to through a character for like that closely for the first time. So it was a really exciting thing to see.
Absolutely. Brendan, I think I read somewhere that Sam said that you connected directly to the joy and love in Charlie, and knowing that if you had played him in a darker or more brooding way, it wouldn't resonate the way it does with the audience. Can you tell us a little bit about your choice in playing him with that kind of joy and love?
If Charlie had a secret power, it would be to see the good in others and bring that out in them, even though they can't see that in themselves. And tragically, he's someone who doesn't see the good in himself either. But he's an educator at heart. He wants to make sure that you're getting something out of who he is to his students, his attempt with his family, with his daughter. If any overjoyed feelings that I had, it's at cause of me borrowing from that internal muscle we have for our children, and I think of my own kids and contrast that in with the circumstances of the screenplay that we're doing. I found that centering and riveting and a good entryway for me. But moreover, I think everything I needed to know was right there on the page, and certainly following Darren's process to rehearse before we started answered a lot of the questions that we had on how to tell the story.
Darren, it must have been a challenge to kind of keep the film from being static, since it was adapted from a play, and I think I read somewhere that the two of you had thought about maybe broadening it beyond the apartment, and then you decided to do it the way you did. Can you talk a little bit about that choice?
Yeah, it was never a question for me to expand it. It was probably a question for the producers at some point, but it's about Charlie, and Charlie, because of his situation, isn't very mobile. So that, to me, was an interesting challenge, was how to make that cinematic. I knew that emotionally, the piece worked, and the structure of the writing worked in that same way, that when you see a great play or a great piece of writing and you don't understand the characters, but every scene that passes, something else is revealed, and then all these layers slowly uncover, and you learn more and more as it goes. Almost like, it's not a murder mystery, this, but that feels like that, how it reveals itself, and that's all because of Sam's writing. But the challenge for me was how to make it cinematic. And my mentor, Stuart Rosenberg, always said that there's only one place to put the camera in every scene. And that's your challenge as a filmmaker. And that comes out of first understanding kind of the theme of the entire piece, and then understanding how each scene is a piece in revealing that theme, and then looking at the performance and seeing what the actors are doing, and putting the camera in the right place. But I knew blocking was going to be a big part, and design was going to be a big part of that apartment. If you think about it, the kind of great, simple breakthrough of my production designers was to put the couch in the middle of the room, which most people, none of us have ever witnessed a couch in the middle of a room, but they made it feel realistic, and that allowed me to kind of not make it just like a play where you're looking at a piece of a pie that's been removed, and that's kind of how like you guys are looking at us on stage, but that suddenly I can use Charlie as kind of a pivot point in the center, as all of these other planets are circling him.
Sam, I was wondering what you changed from the play. I think I heard somewhere the pizza delivery guy was an addition.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of just like trying to find ways to tell the story visually. Like, I think 4 years ago or so, the idea of the second bedroom came up, the sort of archaeology of his past with Alan. In the play, it's referred to as a one-bedroom apartment. And then also Thomas's character is quite different than the play. In the play, he's a Mormon missionary, which I think I did maybe in an unconscious act of self-protection, just because the church that you go to in the movie is much more similar to the church that I had experience with growing up. So actually, like, when we were first talking about it, and I think Darren suggested, like, because at the time it was like, I think the Book of Mormon had just come out.
I felt the Mormons had got beaten up enough.
Yeah. And we were like,
we've all seen the Mormons a lot, like, leave them alone.
But I was like, immediately, I was like, I'm into this, because this is so much closer to my lived experience.
It was exciting when he said that. I was like, oh, it's actually a win-win, because it's actually closer to him.
So his backstory is different. Like it used to be a backstory about like a companion that he beat up, and that was the secret he was holding. And
the pizza guy was funny though, because right before we shot, the Lincoln Center has a incredible library where they record every single play that is put up in New York City. And they had a good amount of them. What?
A good amount of them, not all.
Not all of them?
No, not all.
Okay. Well, anyway, so it was during COVID, and Sam got me in to see it. It was like empty and abandoned, and everyone was like 40 feet away from me. And I got to watch it just to see, like, I hadn't seen it in 10 years, and I figured I should see what another director did with this material, and also see what the original script was like in case we missed something. So I sat there, and there was no pizza guy. And I was convinced that the pizza guy was in the play. And the first phone call, I said, what happened to I thought it was a weird, like, there had been several productions and you had cut out the pizza guy in this one production. Because I pictured it. I could see through the door in the stage and then I was like, oh, how'd they get the pizza guy halfway down the step? Because the stage, they must have had a hole in the stage. Like, the whole thing went through my head. And he's like, no, that's like the first thing I added. But it just shows, like, Sam's writing is like so convincing that I had imagined it and had created a false memory.
Brendan, I want to ask you about the mechanics of playing Charlie, because you wore a suit that weighed 100 pounds, that required several people to carry it about, and prosthetic makeup and all of that. How did that either help or hinder, or both?
It helped.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, then.
I mean, your own personal process, did it kind of get in the way?
It did. To have costume and wardrobe of Charlie's body that is depicted in a way that obeys the laws of gravity and physics, given that it actually has some density to it. It was cumbersome. It was spanned on a clever harness system. It was about 4 hours in, maybe an hour out at the end of the day. Yes, to address Charlie's mobility issues, it made it a challenge for me to stand up in that gear, and it certainly would have been for Charlie, if even more. The simple act of him walking down his hallway is Herculean for him. I found that if there was any discomfort or feeling of being overly encumbered or something like that, when I would play the role from a day-to-day basis, always very, very helpful, because I know that a man who carries that weight has to be very, very strong indeed, deep, deep down on the inside. And when it would come off at the end of the day, I had the most curious response. Like, I felt like I was underwater somehow. Like, you get vertigo. You know, you never stepped off a boat onto a dock, and you're like, whoa. Something stayed with me, so it influenced my body. I found weird little muscles in my arms I didn't know that I had. I for the first time in my career, felt like I'm truly inhabiting a character. So that was good. That helped to play Charlie, yeah.
I can imagine. And I read somewhere that you missed him when you stopped shooting. That you, yeah.
I did. I missed. When I watch this movie, I don't know if he's gonna make it or not. I mean, I believe he does. I believe he does. But I still don't know if he's going to or not. And of the people that I talk to who live with obesity, we work at the Obesity Action Coalition, which is an online group that has tens and tens of thousands of members, and they provide assistance and resources, and they work with people who are candidates for bariatric procedures or have done one. They offer counseling. They're a very helpful group who partnered with us to pretty much give us the information that we needed to tell the story with dignity. And of those individuals I was put in touch with, they gave me testimonials about their own lives that were so honest and revealing about whatever it was that they ate, how they lived, the struggles they had with the healthcare system to just get help. But in talking to them, moreover, I learned that one thing they all had in common, when they were very small, when they were young, there was always a figure, oftentimes sadly it was a father, I noticed, who would speak towards the child in a recriminating way and make them feel poorly about how they appeared in their body. And it's a germination that starts early on, and I think the film is in some ways a testament to how painful speech can be vindictive. We need to go beyond. Charlie does make it, but when we go out into our lives in the world, and this film has a funny way of staying with you, maybe you'll notice. You might need to gather yourself, or maybe you think differently about something than you did before you walked in the door here tonight, and that's important. Remember that. But also remember this. I received a letter from the OAC, from the Canada chapter, and my contact there, he wrote really lovely things about how the film was very important and he liked it very much and all those good stuff. But he ended the letter by saying he believes that this film could save someone's life, and that's good enough for me. If you're going to change hearts and minds, it's not a bad start. So
that's a huge start. Yeah. Well, this is, I know there's going to be a reception afterwards, and I just got the high send, but that's a beautiful note to end on here. So thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming out.